Want to drive faster? Listen in as Kinch Rendell, an SCCA National Trophy winner and multi-time Pro Solo champion himself, interviews the best autocrossers in the land. He talks fast and drives even faster. And now here's your host, Kinch Rendell.
Today's show features Leslie Cohen of LeslieCohenDesign.com. She is a multi-time national champion and pro solo national champion. Also, she's trophied in open class and superstock. She's won championships in Civics and Corvettes. So she knows a bit about front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive and talks about how she approaches those things differently for what she's good at. And let's say a slalom, how she might look at those differently. Once again, you can reach her at LeslieCohenDesign.com. That's LeslieCohen Design, DESIGN.com. Leslie has quite a bit of experience also when it comes to teaching and coaching and riding with people, including the Corvette driving school, Corvette Big Bear Bash Autocross School, the California Club Ladies School, San Diego Region Novice Schools, Porsche Club of America, Lotus Club, BMW Club, Kumo, American Tire Days, you name it, she's probably taught there. I like that she's driven both types of cars and been successful, because that's something I've not looked forward to doing, thinking, oh, if I get into, let's say, a high-power car, will I ever come back? Well, she did that. So it's very interesting when I quiz her about that, like, how did you actually do that, and why did you do that? Like, why go from a Corvette to a Civic? She had many reasons. It was fun. It was great catching up with her. I hope you enjoy it. And I would like input from you if you would like shows to be released on Monday or Friday. Do you think you're more likely to listen to these on your way to an event on the weekend? Or would you rather have them sitting there on Monday so you can listen to them throughout the week? Let me know what your thoughts are, either on the Facebook group or on the website. It's autocrosstalk.com. And on Facebook, it's also Autocross Talk. Check it out. Let me know.
Leslie Cohen, welcome to the show. Can you tell us where autocrossing began for you? Back when?
Back when? It began back in 1996 at my dining room table.
In your what?
At my dining room table. So I always have loved to drive cars, and I would just go driving around on any windy roads I could find, hills and mountains, but, not exceptionally fast. And then we had, someone my husband worked with, we had them over for dinner, and their son was with them, and he was an autocrosser. And we're sitting at the table, and at the time I owned a Mazda MX-6, and they're saying, oh, Leslie, you should come down. You really enjoy this. You would like to get into this, blah, 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 blah. And he actually had a Honda Civic back at the time, but not the Civics like the 89s like you and I had. He had a something newer, and I can't remember what class it was in. And he said, you have a Mazda MX-6, and the national championship or champions for last year are from San Diego. Dan and Kelly Keenhead, they won both classes, and blah 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 blah. So I went down to an event. I rode with him, and this was down in San Diego, down in the parking lot of the stadium. Got car sick. Went, yeah, okay, this is cool. But the next week, they actually had a school. And he said, you got to sign up for this school because Dan and Kelly are teaching. Well, Dan and Kelly were my instructors since I had a similar type of car. And I just remember that, so they had a slalom, and Kelly's like, okay, drive through this slalom. And I drive, and then she goes, would you like me to show you what your car can do? And I go, sure. And she goes, flying through this slalom. Like, I didn't think a car could do that. And then, she said, now you try. And I go flying through the slalom, and I spin out. And I'm like, and I didn't die, right? I'm like, okay, the car spun, and I didn't die. Oh, my God. Well,
you didn't even wreck.
I didn't even wreck. And so I have to say that my first year, I spun a lot because I pushed the car I would just put my foot on the floor. All the time.
And that's something I think a lot of people don't realize where they're at. So you became aggressive right away. Some people I don't think ever get over the line of or the aggression. They don't ever get there. They don't ever challenge what a car can do. What do you attribute that to? Just them showing you? You said, okay, if you can do it, I can try to do it?
That was part of it. And the other part, I don't know where it comes from that it's cars with me that I do that. I honestly don't know. I just know that's what I did. It's like maybe all my pent up aggression or competitiveness and everything else all would go like into the car. It was very costly in a front wheel drive car, because until I learned what I was doing, I went through a lot of front tires. I remember Dave Schatz had a Mazda MX-6, and when my second year in 1997, I started doing pro solos, and I started traveling and competing. And we arranged it that he flew into, I think he flew into Atwater, and I drove my car up, and then he provided the car, I think, at Wendover, and I flew in or something, so that we didn't both have to drag cars everywhere. And at Atwater, which was very abrasive, my lead foot obliterated the front tires in one run. It was awesome.
Oh.
Yeah.
And did I catch it? You said your second season, so you started with a class in 1996, which getting seat time in classes is good. And your next year, you started doing pro solos the next year?
Yeah, and what happened my first year? Okay, so my first year was 1996. My car was an automatic. I did not have a stick. I had not bought it for autocross, and I just ran on street tires. But I did run in G-Stock, and I ran in the open class. So I ran with the guys, and everybody else was on race tires, and I was on street tires and in an automatic. And I actually won the class in the region for the year in 1996, my first year. And I have to tell you, that was pretty much based solely on aggression, because my driving skills certainly were not smooth, phenomenal, well-timed, or anything else. It was just...
Just drive hard.
I just drove hard, but I was not, no, it was interesting. Yeah, so that was my first year. The second year, I turned around and got rid of that car and got another MX-6, but I got a stick shift. And
all because of autocross.
Well, yeah, there you go. Welcome to autocross, right? Got the stick shift, got the second set of wheels, or actually I think I might have gotten a second set of wheels somewhere during the first year so that I wasn't driving on my everyday street tires. But they were just another set of, tires. They weren't like nowadays, where we've got the street tires and, shaving them and all this crazy stuff you're doing and trying 8 million sets of street tires. It was just, I think, I'm not even sure, because my first year I didn't do any practices or anything. I just went to, the events, on weekends once a month maybe.
You drove there, you didn't change tires or anything?
I don't think I did my first year. I just went, drove, took the class.
And went home.
Woo!
Shoot up your front tires and headed back.
Yeah, there you go. That was me. Thank goodness, at the stadium at San Diego, though, at least, the parking lot didn't eat tires. I didn't really learn about storing tires until the second year up at Atwater and went, oh.
Yeah, clean concrete that is abrasive will do that.
Oh, yeah.
So after
the wheel turned and you put it on the floor and you're going to imagine and you're going straight, with the wheels turned. Not good.
That will shred tires. So what other cars have you driven? I mean, I know you've been in a Corvette, but what happened after the Mazda or after the second Mazda?
After the second Mazda, I got a 1989 Corvette, and it was a very rare model. And, San Diego had, and LA had a strong Corvette contingent, and Rita Wilsey was racing, and Gary Thomason was racing, and they're like, let's say, in 1989 would be perfect. It's a really well-behaved, blah, blah, blah. They have to have exactly these features, exactly this, this very specific 89, right? Of which there are very few that were made. Well, as a fluke, I signed one in Southern California, so I bought it. And I think I owned that car for less than a year. I hated it. But you like that, you're going to love this. And I'm going, yeah, uh-huh. I mean, I came in second at the national championships. I came in second in the Pro Solo Challenge finale in that thing. I came in second leg of the national tour. I mean, I had a lot of, a pile of trophies, good trophies in that car, but I just did not enjoy it. The torque was far too gradual for me. I like a car that gets up and goes, and that thing was more gradual. It's also, I don't know, it felt heavier to me. Plus, the other thing is, my cars were also always my daily drivers. There's only one of my cars that I raced that was not a daily driver. So, as an everyday driver, that car was a pain in the neck because the 89 Corvette had those, the high sides, right, on the left and right. You go to get out, and you're like up and over the sides, and it had big, long, heavy doors. And I'd be like wearing a dress, parked facing uphill, and couldn't get out of the car. And I remember one time finally just taking my legs and kicking my door open. I'm pretty sure everybody got a really good, flash of, whatever. And, so I could get out of my car because I was just so mad I couldn't even get the door open. So that car left.
that was there and gone. You made me glad, actually. I looked at buying one of those a while back, maybe for A-Stock or whatever it was in. I'm so glad I didn't buy one. So after the Corvette, what'd you do?
Oh, well, I still had that thing. And I really didn't love it. And Jason Wada had bought a Z06 Corvette, the first one from 2001. He got one very early on. So I also knew because they put the new Z06 in the same class, which my older one was in Superstock, and they put the new one, the Z06, in Superstock. And I was like, chances of these competing, and mine winning are going to be slim to none. So what happened is we had talked about, well, maybe we'd co-drive, and we both were driving his car as a practice. And I was going to co-drive his car. And basically, I ended up getting my own car. Mark sort of was saw how much I loved the thing, and he got me my own car, and Jason actually drove our car with us. And so that's in 2001, I had a Z06 Corvette. And in 2001, I won my first national championship. And in 2001, I was in Kansas for 9/11. And I won my championship 2 days after 9/11. So
yeah, so I started that, I guess, right after nationals, because I remember Jeff Lundgren, who worked with me, was stuck out there and all the challenges with that going on.
I was stuck out there. It happened in the middle of nationals. So I was working the first 2 days as grid chief, so that I wouldn't be working the second 2 days when I ran. And it happened on the second day, I believe it was the second day that they were running. I can't remember how that worked exactly, but basically it was before I was even running. And they decided to let us finish the national championships, but it was a condensed format. And it was interesting because before we got onto this podcast, you and I were talking on the side, and we were talking about focus and things like that. What was really interesting, and it is something that has occurred many times in my life, when something really, some kind of catastrophe or disaster happens, I kind of really focus in and just sort of get done what needs to be done. And people that just know me probably would not think that. They'd think, oh my God, Leslie's going to fall apart or whatever if X happens or this happens. Because if it's unimportant, I may, react
easily
more
distracted.
Drastically. If it's actually really important, I mean, and this is getting off topic, by the way, but my dad was out of town. We were at home. My mom had a waterbed. It broke. It flooded the house, and my mom couldn't deal with it. And here I am. I'm a little kid, and I'm on it. I'm calling the fire department. I don't know how I knew to call the light. I'm getting, the water sucked out of the house, and I'm doing this. I'm doing all this stuff, and then I'm getting up and I take, make breakfast and go to school and everything else, right? And I've always been that way. So we have 9/11, and I became the laser focused brain when when I drove. I was just in the zone. That was the only thing I thought about. because that was like all that was important at that point. It was the only thing I could control was my driving.
And are you able to bring in that focus when you are racing? Like, tell me more about your thoughts when it comes to actually focusing for each run, in between runs. What are your thoughts there?
Well, when things are going well, yes. When things aren't going so well, no. And there's a distinct difference. I have been in Wendover, Utah before at a pro solo that didn't go so phenomenally well. Could not focus for the life of me. I'm driving around the turnaround at the end of the pro solo, right? And, and then at the turnaround, and I'm looking at the mountains, like going, wow, it is really pretty out. It was not one of my better races. So can I always focus? No, but usually, yes. And I think, part of the reason I love pro solo more than regular solo, well, there's a couple of reasons. I love the drag race start, but I think that whole thing of the clock and watching the lights, the tree, I think that required such a focus that I was totally into it. That you're there before you've actually taken off because you've had to get there before you took off. Whereas at a regular solo, you're just sitting there waiting for a flag person. Depending on which cheer it was and which theory of mine I thought might be the best as far as how to go about winning, I might be listening to music really loud. I might not be listening to music at all. I might be doing deep breathing. I did all these different bizarre things during solo, trying to, get focused, right? But pro solos, I never had to actually create that because the tree did that for me. That whole, I got to get up there within 20 seconds and I got to be staged and I got to do this. There was just the minute you were not the second person back, the minute you had to pull up, that was it. You were totally focused.
So basically you kept your mind locked in the whole time because of all that. I have to get staged properly. I have to watch the clock. So you didn't have time to look at the mountains. I
didn't have time to do all those things. So when I was actually on course at a pro solo looking at the mountains, believe me, it was a very bad weekend. I believe that is the only weekend in my entire racing career that we left early. And because we would go on these treks, right? And it'd be all the Southern California people would go or whatever. We'd drive back together and, well, we didn't even stay and finish watching the entire event, even though I had friends in the challenge and everything else, and I normally have always stayed and watched them. It was just, it was a very difficult weekend for me. Other things were going on in life, and I just could not focus for the life of me, and it was very irritating. Because normally a pro solo, you're in it. So, we would just put that one aside. That whole format of a pro solo keeps you focused. At least for me, it did. It was just very intense. I actually really liked the format a lot.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of crazy in that I look at the clock, I get up there, and I'm like, oh, I've got 6 seconds to do nothing. So I usually look over at the competitor. I'm like, what are they doing? Are they focused? Oh, they're pretty focused. Oh, yeah, it's about time. So I'm probably taking this to extreme, but I almost look for the distractions. I feel like at times I race better when I'm not thinking anything. If anything, I'm like, look ahead. Where are you looking? I ask myself, where am I looking? I'm looking ahead. And that seems to be my best. Otherwise, I can fall apart and start literally, oh, yeah, look at the trees. Oh, look at the course worker. Or look at the cone. It's not quite in the box. So that's why a lot of this podcast would be fun for me to go, what are you doing mentally? Because I realize that's where I lack at times hugely. It's like, oh, you need to focus for that 60 seconds. You really, really should try it.
Well, and ultimately, I think I have 4 national championships, I believe. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, do I? Yeah, in regular solo, because I'm distinguishing from pro solo. And you have to realize that the majority of those, my best run will mean I did something wrong at the very beginning, very early in on the run, and I got mad at myself. Because when I get mad at myself, all inhibition would just leave, all thought would leave. All that over-processing and worrying, well, all the training, it's just like being a professional of anything, an athlete, a pianist, or this or that, right? you practice so that it basically, when you train and train and train, so that it basically becomes something unconscious. Well, the problem is your mind gets in the way and will sit here thinking about all this stuff while you're driving. Well, if your mind actually stops thinking about it so consciously, right, all your instinct is just going to kick in. It's just going to work. So what would happen on a large percentage of things that I would win is I would do something where I got so mad at myself in the first 5 seconds of the course that all thinking flew out of my head and I would just drive.
Do you think you were focused on being mad the whole run, like how dare I do that, and then you were just driving? Do you think you thought about it the whole run, or do you just kind of let go?
No, I didn't sit there and think about it, because the ones where I thought about what I was doing, that's not good, because then I hit a cone.
You're distracted, okay.
It was like that split second of, well, I'm not going to say the words, but anyhow, some unpleasant word that might have actually come out of my mouth really loud while I was driving, but it was like split second, and then it was just like, and that was it. I remember going through one of my national championships, actually, in my Z06 Corvette, and there was, for a solo 2, there was a straightaway at the beginning of the course, and I was all excited. It's like, oh my gosh, do I have this to be awesome? I'm going to Florida to be like, take off. So what do? I shift into, I don't know if it was 3rd or 5th by mistake. So I have all this wasted time, right? I'm in the wrong gear. I'm going nowhere. I'm having to shift that down, right? So that period of time, right, when I'm processing what's happening and then I'm messed up, I got so mad at myself, but then I let go. I look ahead. Well, right after that, there were actually 2 sets of slaloms, which at that point in time, I never thought I was that great at slaloming. I don't think I had ever tested the limit of a Z06 slaloming. I went through those slaloms faster than I ever knew that car could go. I had no idea because I was just furious. My foot was in it, but I was seeing the whole course. I mean, my mind was just like absorbing everything, and the hands were just turning, and the timing was all right. And, it was just like, oh my God, I came out with the adrenaline rush when I was done with that run. It was unbelievable. Like, oh my God, I didn't know my car could even do that. Wow,
Do you get the shakes often or ever? Like your hands shaky after runs?
I did, yeah. I used to. I got that less and less over time, which was kind of sad. I got that a lot. I got that a lot more with V8s than the Gutless Wonder. So how do you go from a Corvette Z06 to a STL Civic or an ST Civic? Did you transition easily right away? Did you go from one car to the next? Yeah, actually, I just sort of did. How did that happen? Why did that happen? I don't know. For some reason, James Gunn Wilkinson thought that would be a good car to have, but he wanted, to go in on a car and have a group. And so we actually bought the car together in the beginning. That's how we started. And actually, in the very beginning, I still was in the Corvette, and he drove that thing, and actually some other people drove it, and then I kind of started driving it. But was it easy? Well, let's see.
Well, yeah, I've been scared to drive the faster cars, thinking I would never come back to a slower car again. And yet you went from slower cars to Z06 and ended up in a Civic, which is surprising to me.
Well, part of that, gosh, there were so many things that went into that, and part of that was my Z06 was my daily driver. So it was never ending because, I'm on race tires, and it's like, okay, but I got to drive this thing for work on Monday, and we're coming home Sunday night, but my poor husband needs to change tires. And in the beginning, I towed a little baby trailer behind my first Z06, and I got a second Z06. I got rid of the first one and got a 2003. But at the time in 2003, we got a big trailer, and we towed the Corvette. So here you are, you're coming home Sunday night. You got to get the thing off the trailer. If you didn't have time to change tires at the event, you got to change them. Half the time, they didn't get changed. I wasn't about to drive all over town on my very expensive race tires. So I'd be trying to schedule Mondays where I'd be in my office. So I didn't have to leave, and I didn't have to drive. And Mark would come home at lunchtime on Monday and change tires because the Z06 tires, they're just too heavy for me. I mean, I could do them. But that for me would be this huge, really slow, long process because I had to sit on the ground and lift them with my heels because I'm not strong enough.
So the Civic made sense for a lot of reasons, especially if you didn't have to take it everywhere and change the tires, basically.
And it was a dedicated race car. So it was like, okay, I could have my everyday car and this thing could be a dedicated race car, and my husband could finally not be forced to be running home every Monday at some point trying to change tires because he was so tired on Sunday, and then change them all back again on Friday night, And
Mark gets an award. He gets the Overachiever Award. Best husband ever.
He was doing all this stuff for me, and it was just crazy. So little did we know that when you got an ST car, you would work on that more than you ever changed tires on a Corvette ever. So, yeah.
I did not ever put the shitbox sticker on my car because I did not want it to break. I was like, that's a bad omen right there. I can't do that. Don't want to invite that.
Well, you're taking these cars and then you're putting all this cool stuff on, you maxed them out, and then you've got these old parts still on them, and any old part that's left is going to break, and plus you're torturing them to their limits. Those things weren't designed for that, so they broke every 5 seconds.
Oh, please. Honda knew that would be one of the best cars for decades to come. They planned it all out right, except for the sunroof. I don't know why they put the sunroof in the SI. It's silly.
I don't know.
So what are your thoughts when you first got in the Civic?
Yeah.
Did you take to it naturally since you'd done some front-wheel drive? And then let's think about the differences between the Corvette and the Civic, as you had said, or we talked earlier, like how you approach things differently, like a sprint or how you do a slalom.
Well, it was interesting. I had some issues with it. I was used to rear-wheel drive, so I was used to stylistically a different kind of driving, and it's I would use the power to make up for deficiencies in my driving. And over the years, the better I got, the less I did that. But, if in the Corvette, if I went into a turn or corner, or basically U-turn shape, let's say in a Pro Solo, too hot, right, went in and I wasn't looking far enough ahead, I could stomp on the brakes in that car, hit the brakes fairly hard, lift off, turn the wheel, right? The rear end of the car would come around on me because I had put all, the nose down and all the weight on the front end. And then as soon as I got to a certain point in that turn, I would step on the gas again. And I sort of had the sense that, I had been driving that car long enough that I kind of had the timing right as to when the weight was going back and transitioning towards the rear. It's when I take off shooting in the right direction, coming out of the turn, right? But and that's not the fastest way around the turn, by the way, in the Corvette. That was just, it took years. I mean, it wasn't really till toward the end of my Corvette driving days there, that I was actually braking much earlier for turns, much lighter, and carrying speed around turns. So it's kind of fascinating. But the Civic, I had a hard time with because I was used to using brakes. And, so I used them. Actually, I used them through my entire Civic career, which was a problem. That was my biggest problem in the Civic was the fact that I was used to driving a car that had enough power that you actually would use the brake pedal. And the Civic, you really mostly want to lift. You don't want to, you rarely touch the brake pedal, right? And if you do, it's really light. Otherwise, you scrub off all this time and you will not win. So it was never
all right. So tell people, you left foot brake or right foot brake?
I right foot brake. I don't use 2 feet.
So this is where I'm challenging myself this year in the Civic to do some only right foot braking. I hope I try it. So I do brake, and I'm a person that tries to brake late and trail brake and do lots of crazy things that people don't think are possible, because if you lift in the Civic at the wrong time, you spin. But
really?
the left foot can make it all calm. So therefore, I left foot brake to the detriment of I basically never lift to induce oversteer. So I think you can, at least I think I brake in my car. Of course, it doesn't brake anything like a Z06 that has analog brakes. I've been in one and was blown away, or a Type R Integra that can actually brake. So maybe it's that my brakes, I'm trying to brake and they're just not very good. But literally, that's a big difference, I think, right there is you knew not to use the brake very much. You could just induce oversteer by lifting. Well,
yes. But the other thing is, what's interesting is I remember competing. It was a local event. I was up in Fontana, and I was up there running the Civic, and I was flying. And Guy Ankeny had, I believe it was, I think they were driving. He might have been with Craig Napier that day. I'm not sure. I think they had a C-prepared car. Now they did have older tires, okay, but I was going faster than them. And Guy was giving me the hardest time ever. This, can't be possible. You cannot be going that fast. Blah, 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 blah. Not possible. This is a front-wheel drive car. So finally, it's like, get in the stupid car. You're going for a ride with me. Well, when he rode with me, when we came in, he said, wow. He said, I've never been in a front-wheel drive car that handled as close to a rear-wheel drive car as this one. And so part was set up at that point in time as to how the car was set up so that it didn't behave so much like a front-wheel drive car in the first place. Of course, then Guy and the crew over there, they went and put new tires on the CP car, and then they went fast. But he didn't think the Civic could go that fast. He kept thinking it was, cutting out part of the course. So we had the car set up really well. But really, truly, what the Civic did for me was really got me looking ahead farther than I ever had in the Corvette, because you really didn't want to use the brakes, or barely at all. So I learned to brake so early, which just seemed so unnatural to me, but it was like looking way ahead and barely touching the brakes, just enough to get a little bit of weight on the front tires, and then back on the gas, and you're going around a turn. Not floored, and that was another thing, learning exactly how much gas versus front-wheel drive for me was always that interesting challenge of too much gas, plow off the front tire things. But I didn't really have that with the Civic. I had moved beyond that.
You're refined by then.
I was refined by then. But one of my strongest, I would say my strongest skills in the Civic for quite a while was slaloming. I went to an Evo school, and Mike Jr. Johnson was started as my instructor. And he took one ride with me, and he said, I can't possibly do a slalom that well or that fast. I don't know what I could possibly say to you, so I'm going to have Tim Arrow be your instructor, because he's pretty analytical and he can probably find something. And it was funny, but I was at that point, I could slalom amazingly well. I had always thought in the V8s that my strong point was actually in turns, not in slaloms.
So more of the sweepers. So what are your top tips?
The
top tips if you think about a slalom. Let's first do the Civic. What is it, looking ahead? Is it looking at all the cones at once? Is it entering? What are your top tips for slaloms and Civics?
Actually, my tips now are about the same. It is It is looking ahead and trying to kind of, it's absorbing that whole slalom, kind of keeping your head up and kind of absorbing it so you're seeing the spacing and that you're turning. Your hands are turning the whole time. But you're starting very early and you're slowing down. That's just it. Once again, it's just like making the turns. The slowing down, which doesn't mean stomping on it and, coming to a grinding halt, but the slowing down is almost at the point as if you were slowing down for an entire slalom cone before, like there was an extra one in advance of all the cones you started, and you were slowing down for that because you want to drive through your slalom. You actually want to be under control and actually driving. Well, whatever level of control, but you don't want to be braking in the slalom. You want to be driving in the slalom.
All right, so entry is very important, and then you said also seeing the whole slalom.
Seeing the whole slalom. Seeing the slalom is what's helping you set your pace. As far as how much gas can you truly get and still hang on without, something horrible happening. And then, that's the other thing. It's looking far enough ahead that you come out of that thing with a really strong acceleration. You're accelerating as early as humanly possible on the way out. And I have to tell you that, I've had so many people help me over the years. But like Gary Thomas's secret is that he is, the entries are so good, right? That when they're slowed down and him driving through whatever element he's going through, he is on that gas accelerating harder than his competitors on the way out. He'll be, any of those guys. I remember standing there, one event at a pro solo, and lucky me, I got to, they had a shortage of workers, so I got to work like 2 solid shifts in a row. I thought I was going to die, but I sat there and I got to watch Superstock Open, and I'm trying to think who else, because I'm sitting there watching Bob Snell, and I'm watching all these top drivers and analyzing the heck out of them while I'm working and going, wow, the really good ones, the ones that have the top times, all have slowed down much sooner in the entries. They haven't gone in real deep and stepped on it really hard. They've slowed down mildly, so to speak, very early, and they're on the gas as they're driving through, and as they're coming out of whatever element they are floored, and they have started flooring it, 5, 10, 15, 20 feet before other people, depending on what kind of element it is. Yeah, early. I mean, they're just, and then that was crazy important. And so that was something I picked up on, and I was learning was, wow, everything about the sport is early. And it's so funny because when you go to Corvette-only type events, Corvette people are thrilled to death that they have these cars with all this massive power, and they teach. And it's funny because I may be misstating this, but I went to certain driving schools at tracks that were not Bob Bondurant, and people would tell me, no, at Bondurant they say go in deep, slam on the brakes. Now I don't know if that's true or not, but there is an entire whole following of people driving those kind of cars that believe that's how you go about it. And it's interesting because that was never the fastest way ever.
Yeah, I think that's the most riskiest thing. I know at times I do that, and it's definitely cost me, especially when I'm like, I'm going to do a hero run, which has never worked. I try to brake later.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work because it's so easy to start pushing and just scrub off half a second. It's incredible how easy that is to do.
Right. It just goes. It's not like you gain it back somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, I pushed. Now my tires are extra hot, so that's going to be good for what? So it sounds like you learned by watching. You've also gone to schools. Did you learn much by getting other people in your car, like that first time when somebody got in your car and showed you the slalom? What do you attribute most of your learning, or is it all these little pieces together?
It was all little pieces, but I have had, I don't know where I got this ability, and I've kind of had it my whole life, of picking out what is important to learn, or picking out who is important to learn from. So, because of where I was geographically in the country, I had at my disposal, so to speak, I had Gary Thomason, right, and Rita Wilsey, and a few other really good drivers. And in the beginning, Dan and Kelly Cadenhead, but Dan and Kelly kind of moved on. So they were my mentors my first year and a half, 2 years maybe, and then they kind of went off to boating and doing other things. But I had very good people that I would listen to. Oh, and then James Gunn Wilkinson. But James really, you know what, I have to tell you, he's hilarious because pretty much he'll just say, Leslie, you're not looking far enough ahead. Anytime he'd ride with me, if I had a problem, I said, James, will you ride with me? Well, Leslie, just look farther ahead. And invariably he was right. But I would walk course with these people. I would ride with them. I would have them ride with me. I would listen. I would try things. I went to schools. But I did not listen to everybody. I picked just a few people and went, these are the only people I'm listening to. And I'm not listening to anybody else. You know, because it's too much and I got to pick through. I mean, oh my God, I used to ask Gary the stupidest questions. It would drive him insane. We'd do a walking course and this is when I was newer. We'd do a walking course and I'd go, where are you braking? And you have to realize, he's driving an RX-7 and I'm driving a Mazda MX-6. Very different cars. And I go, where are you braking? Exactly where are you braking? He goes, I don't know. Because for pieces, he looks ahead, right? He goes, one time he goes, I don't know, right about here. So what do? I go flying out. I hit the brakes. Oh, right about there. First of all, my car is very different. Number two, I'm not looking ahead at all. I'm driving like a robot, right? Okay, brake here. Fly off the end of the course. This was awesome. It's like, okay, Leslie, start driving for yourself. You really do need to think for yourself. But then little bits and pieces. I mean, like one time, John Hayes, who he competed nationally a couple of times. So he was mainly just a local San Diego guy with a lot of natural talent, actually. And he may have competed nationally more before I started racing. But I remember he just said one thing to me one day, and it just clicked. And to this day, I've never forgotten it. He said, Leslie, cars go in radiuses. They go in curves. Because I would, you know, basically go up, step on it, turn the wheel. You know what I mean? I was making, so to speak, quote, a box as best you can. And all of a sudden, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I would walk course, and I would stand and look across the course and determine where I thought I should be apexing on the other side, and I draw. And to this day, people will see me, if I walk a course, drawing lines. I draw the arc. And that would show me where I had to enter to be able to make my exit. And I do draw arcs. And that is when I talk, I show people that. I stand there and I say, look, your car goes in a curve. So if you take a line and we draw the curve backwards, and I would walk course, well, I firmly believe in course walking. Absolutely. But
How many course walks?
Pardon?
How many course walks?
Well, that would vary based on the year.
What would you recommend?
Let's see. At nationals, probably 6 to 8 sides, 8 times per side.
Okay, pro solo, you're saying 6 to 8 sides, or 6 to 8 per side.
Actually, I would walk. Okay, pro solo. Well, pro solo, I wouldn't walk as much because you could drive it so many times. So I would walk a couple times in the morning, and then I might walk at lunch, and I might walk a couple more times in the evening. So ultimately, there were a lot of walks in there, I guess. But, you know, a solo course, if I was really serious at a big competition, I would be walking quite a few times. And I would, you know, different years I did different things depending on where I was in my learning curve. So I went through a phase where I would walk the course and I would imagine all the potential screw-ups that I could imagine. I go, okay, pretend I just screwed up the braking point. So I'm over here now. And I would physically walk over to where I thought the car would be, and then I'd walk my way out of it, trying to figure out how I was going to get back where I needed. And so I know one year that was really my thing. I spent probably every time I walked course, I went through and I was working out all these, variations of my
contingency plans, basically. Like, oops, I'm over here.
Yeah, I had contingency plans. And that was exhausting. So, that lasted for around a year or two. And I'm like, okay, move beyond the contingency plan phase to all right, now we're going to go into the ultra look ahead phase. Or we're so, obviously I have had an evolution over the years of different techniques of how I would approach driving. Seriously, though, I mean, personal is just always more consistent for me. It's just always easier. The format, because of the format, I mostly had a consistent type of approach to it. A solo too, my approach would change. I would, and be like, okay, well, let's see how loud I can blare music at the starting line. See if that, pumps me up. Oh no,
you're just trying lots of things.
Oh yeah, and then it was, I need to be calm, so I'm going to try Zen music at the starting line. That was pretty
I haven't tried music in a while, only because the car doesn't have it. I want to come back and interrupt you.
I didn't have music.
Yeah, you couldn't unless you brought your headphones or headset up in there.
I
love what you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I'm going to bring you back to the curves. I love the thought of you drawing lines. I do that because I picked up from somebody as well. Like, okay, it's an arc. And literally, if you have a big sharp point in your arc, you had to slow down to accomplish that. So what I believe you were saying is, you said everything goes in arcs. So I'm always thinking on the autocross course, I should always be arcing somewhere.
Yes.
Like very seldom, and I actually get a little upset when there's a course I drive straight for a while. I'm like, this does not feel right. I should be turning somewhere. And the other part of that is, if you're even making bigger arcs, it's closer to a straight line, so therefore you can go faster. And something you said made me think that's what you basically figured out. Hey, the sooner I start this arc, and the smoother the arc is, the faster you can go through it.
Well, yes, but there's the other thing is, there's the weighing out of the size of that arc. Because very rarely, in autocross, is a large arc faster than a small arc, because there's not enough speed difference. If you straighten that line out, right, and the tiny arc was 10 feet long, and the big arc was 30 feet long, you would not be going fast enough to be taking the 30-foot arc. There's not the way autocross works. So if you watch...
I 100% agree. 100% agree.
Yeah. So it's interesting, because it's the small arc, but it's still an arc, which was not what I grasped. And, I remember, oh my gosh, my early on, everybody going, Leslie, use the whole width of the course, use the course. And I'd be fighting with my car to stay in a straight line. Well, when that whole kind of arc concept broke open in my head, it was like, wait a minute. Even the straightaways, you are still arcing because you've come out of an element, you've got another one you're going to go into it, and if you're going fast enough, if your foot is ground into the pedal hard enough, your car's going to be pushing because you are not perfectly straight. And if you slow down enough to be perfectly straight, guess what you did? You slowed down. So autocross, every inch of it is an arc. There is no, ultimately, at a pro solo, there's a start line. And that is the only time that you are in a straight line, right? Everything else is an arc. And actually I found at the track that was pretty much very similar too. If I was going fast enough, only on the big long straightaways are you actually going straight. But really, truly, you come out of a turn at a track. If you have done it right, you are pushing. You're on the outside bumpers. You push. You're just on that edge, so it's still an arc. So it takes a very long straightaway for you not to be arcing. If you want
a gradual arc.
Yeah, if you want to truly use all the power your car has. Now, the flip side of that is, that would be taking a Corvette to a track, Civic at a track. Well, you would have a lot of straightaways.
Yes. More straightaways.
Doesn't have the, I mean, at some point you're just like, okay, you have accelerated to the edge of the arc and now you just need to stay straight. You don't want to use one more inch out farther on the course because you're just wasting space because the car is not going to go fast enough. But in a car where it always had more power than I could ever use all the speed, right, you were always pushing. And so it's interesting because that changed my driving pretty radically. So that whole art concept was gigantic, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I understand using the course. And when you kind of let the car, all of a sudden it was like, oh, the car is dancing. And that's what I felt like. I would feel like when I was really on and everything was just working, the car is just dancing. We just had this dance. And I called it that, actually. It just feels like it's dancing through all the elements because it's just flowing.
Exactly. You feel like, hey, it's sliding a little bit, just the right amount. Tell us this. How many core events per year did you make back when you started and throughout? It sounds like you made quite a few events.
In the very beginning, the first year, I probably made maybe 8. I didn't do any practices. I just went to events, and I don't know. I made enough to actually win for the season locally, but I started doing more and more, and in the height of things, which I would say was the early 2000s when I was driving the most, I would be driving for sure 2 to 3 weekends a month. Locally, traveling. I was driving anywhere I could go. I was driving a lot. I'd be up in LA. I'd be down in San Diego. I'd be traveling. I drove a lot. I put a lot of time in. And then I died way back. I mean, when I got the Civic, I actually was not driving as much. My first year that we had the Civic, well, let's see. The first year we had the Civic, is that the year it broke?
You won SSL in 2001 and 2004.
Yeah. And I started with the Civic in 2005, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And you won 2009, 2010 in the Civic and solo.
Yeah, and what happened is 2006, the Civic broke, like needed an engine. And what happened is, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at my background. So what happened was, I jumped into Henry Bodkin's ESP Camaro.
ESP car? Oh, okay.
ESP car. I love that car. But what happened was, because I ran my first pro solo of the season in his car, I'm trying to think about that. Is that how it went? I think so.
So literally, you needed a ride, so you got into it. So you probably stuck with it for the pro solo season.
I got into it, and then what happened is I won. And I won first. I kept winning first in his car. I loved his car. So what happened is I stayed in his car the whole year while my car got worked on. So I didn't actually run the Honda in 2006. I drove his car. And then, so I got back in the Civic in 2007. But it's interesting because I started cutting back on my driving. What's really interesting, so you're telling me 2008. 2008 was pretty fascinating. You're right. I won in 2008. Wait a minute.
No, I think you won in 9 and 10.
Corvette. I was going to say, so in 2008, I got really inspired and decided to bring the Corvette to Nationals and run open, even though I hadn't been driving it much. But I just decided to do that at the last minute. Because I occasionally have these brilliant ideas. I was like, I'm bored, and I want to drive my Corvette. I haven't driven it in ages. I only drove it here. I'm going to drive it at Nationals. And I think what had happened is I had a problem with the Civic, and I had run the Corvette or somebody's Corvette or my Corvette or Pro Solo. So I ran open, actually, and I trophied in open in 57 drivers in open class in Super Stock in 2008. And I trophied in my car that I hadn't been driving. So I thought that was pretty good. But, yeah, 2009 was unbelievable because that was an amazing year. The recession had hit really good, and I'm a designer. And my husband had a specialty contracting company, and it was very scary. And so I was just going to run the San Diego Tour and the El Toro Pro Solo, the things that were close to my house, and I was not going to drive in 2009. That was my plan. It was like, sorry, but we can't afford to do this, you know. So what happened is I ran the national tour. I won first. And I think, let's see, I was running on Toyotas. Bridgestone is the tour probably, but Toyotas by the time I got to the Pro Solo. But I ran at the Pro Solo, and I won class, and I also won the challenge. And I won a bunch of money because Honda was paying. I won tires. And I remember I was just going to those two events so that I could see all my friends from all over the country and say goodbye to everybody. And I was crying at El Toro. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, I can do one more race. And that's what it was about. I was like, oh my God, I get to come and see you guys one more time. It wasn't about, it was really strange. I was going to not be able to drive. So I was just coming out. And so I wasn't, it was really interesting. It was a very different mental place because I wasn't all competitive. I wasn't thinking about my driving. I wasn't going to practices. I wasn't doing anything, right? I wasn't driving in 2009. I only ran the national events. So I went to Wendover and, I won the challenge again. So I won a bunch of money and I won a bunch of tires, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, holy cow, I could actually take this thing. And
yeah, because you had the points for the finale.
Yeah, so it was like all of a sudden I was like, oh my God. So I actually flew to Toledo and drove Tim Smith's car, and I won L1 out there, I won class, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to nationals. None of this ever planned, me not practicing, right? Me thinking, I'm just in this. Each time I went, I was kind of like, well, I just want to see my friends and say goodbye. And, yeah, I remember, I'm pretty sure that was the year that, Katie made me a cake and we ate it on the roof of the Civic, and because there was no paint on the Civic, it just made permanent oil stains. It was awesome. But, I won the Pro Solo finale. I won the series. I won everything. I won the national championship. I won the Pro Solo challenge. I won absolutely everything. And I think, I attributed that to the fact that, mentally, I just wanted to have fun and I wanted to be with my friends, and my body had already had all the training, right? I've been training for years. But,
like you said, you're relaxed and you were just wanting to have fun. You thought you might not get to do it.
Yeah.
You get to hang out with your friends, the community, and have fun.
Yeah, it was a race by race thing. Because I didn't do very many races the year before, 2008. Things had started going downhill, and economy-wise, and so I didn't do a lot of races in 2008. So and I mainly ran the Corvette too, because I just was sick of the Honda. I really wanted power. I've always wanted power. What can I say? So it was really interesting, that here it is. I've won during times when I was focused on being competitive, but when I really won everything was when my focus was more on having fun and seeing my friends. Because there had gotten to be a point, too. That was another thing. I had been driving so many weekends for so long and being so competitive, and it wasn't getting to be fun anymore. It was getting to be almost like a job. And,
try to keep doing so well, keep winning.
Keep going, do this. And husband, work on car. And he's getting sick of it, all that. And we were just, kind of getting burnt out. And then it was amazing. 2009, 2010, again, I didn't drive a lot locally. I didn't put all that time in that I had used to be putting in, and I won, I won the L1 in the Pro Solo, and I won the national tour, but I did not win the challenge series the same way. That one's tougher, but yeah, so it was interesting. But I had been, cutting back. So, but I don't know. I was having fun.
Like you said, you already knew how to drive. So literally, you just went there and had fun and did it. Tell me, which car did you drive at nationals? Your car or Tim's car?
Mine.
Okay. Well, if you think Tim's car is still possibly fast, I can probably get you a seat in that for nationals.
No. I take that back. I take this back completely. All right, I lied. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Hey, they'll never know.
Thought,
wait, you just told them.
And what happened is I didn't think you said Tim. I thought you said Ken, and I was thinking Motnishi, and I was thinking I don't drive Ken's car at Nationals. No. 1 year, I drove Tim Smith's car. You want to talk about really being confused. And another year, I drove Jason Frank's car. And my two national champion wins in Civics were at Nationals. I was in their cars, and actually it was very interesting because the one where I was in Jason Frank's car, I was in Tim Smith's car in 2009. I was in Tim Smith's car for the Pro Solo and in Jason Frank's car for the Solo. And I had never driven Jason Frank's car before. It was pretty funny. I mean, I can't believe I even won because I know one day it was in the rain and I spun in his car and I got so mixed up I didn't even know which way I was going and I sat there looking around waiting for a course worker to point me so I would drive in the right direction. and I won. But I had never driven his car before. Oh my God, what am I thinking?
Well, I really like Tim's cars, so I bought Tim's car. So you're welcome. This year coming up, you need to fly somewhere, drive a little bit. Just let me know.
A nice car, like that car. But yeah, that's pretty funny because I was thinking about that. So I was like, wait, what am I driving? What did I drive?
So you obviously hopped in different cars. Talk to me about setup. Did you get in their cars and want to change shocks? Did you change your shock settings much? Did you fiddle with springs? What's your thoughts on setup?
I've learned a lot about setup, and I've learned mostly what I really love is driver comfort is the ultimate. So having a Z06, being able to turn on air conditioning at the start line when it's so hot so you don't have to open the stupid door to get air in your Civic.
Yeah.
It's all about the driver. I mean, as long as you have a reasonable setup and good tires, right? I mean, you can't have a crappy setup. But it's the driver, right? The driver's going to make or break this thing. So I have discovered a few things over the years that I really like. I like driver comfort. So I actually really liked the fact that I had a radio and I had air conditioning and things like that. And I had a car where I pretty much figured out settings and didn't mess with them. And that was the Z06, right? It's kind of, we got it figured out, and then we might try something a little different the next year. I mean, seriously, I did not change that car.
Gotcha.
The Civic was more of a beast because you had to keep up with the Joneses, or shall we call them the Wongses. So that was really interesting because there were more things to do. And I learned more about shocks and springs, and really, truly, I am still a person that I prefer to find basically a setup that works for me and leave it that way and not mess with it all the time. That lets me focus more on my driving. The more I mess with my setup, the more I worry about the setup, and then I don't think about my driving as much. I don't think about the course. I think about the car instead of the course, right? I don't look ahead because I'm thinking about, whatever. So I like to not think about my cars. And I know that's not the biggest help. There are those people that are just really set up gurus, right? And that's their thing. And mine are like, find the best people I can that I trust the most to help me get my car set up the best I can, and then go drive my car. And just keep driving.
Focus on you and what you have to do.
Yes. I did. I mean, I've learned, I know more than I know this. I do understand that I know a lot more about cars than I give myself credit for. My language in describing things to people is hilarious. Camber, I don't think I probably used the word camber actually for at least my first 5 to 7 years driving. I would just say my wheels were slanty. And they were either slanty the right way or slanty the wrong way, or the slantiness needed to be adjusted.
Do you remember me asking you at Nationals about your slanty on day 2?
I think I do.
Yeah, so here's what I remember. So I go to nationals. I don't know what year that was. Probably my second year in the Civic. So I finally beat Jeff Long in a pro solo, and I beat Jason Frank in a pro solo. And then I showed up at nationals, and at the pro I was like a second behind to begin with and never made any ground. And then day one, we were on the East course, I believe. Yes, the non-sweeper course. And they were up by a second right off the bat, or second and a half, something crazy. So I came over to you in grid that next morning. Were you running open? You must have been.
I thought
Did you run open?
I ran
Yes,
open.
you ran open. So I came over and I go, Leslie, would you please mind telling me what camber settings you have? Does that remind you what you told me once I asked that?
What did I say?
You said, I'm at minus 4.3, which is the max I can have. And Kinch, until I did this, I could no longer keep up with the Wongs. So I went back to my grid spot, grid spot, literally, had the car up in the air and adjusted my camber. And literally at that point, I think Jeff beat me by like 2 or 3 tenths, but no one else was more than a few hundredths ahead. You literally told me, you go, until I did this, I could no longer keep up with them.
Right. And you know what? It's just funny because the things that would, I didn't want to, like this Corvette, because it was my everyday driver, I really didn't want to go as far with the negative camber, as people were going, right? And as long as I could get away with it, I would not, I kept my car at 1.5 degrees, 1.25, 1.5 degrees negative camber, something like that, right? But the car could easily take 2.25. And if you were in, ASP or some other, not stock class, they were going to like negative 30 or something. I can't remember. But I do remember when I finally went, well, I want to keep winning. I need to be able to win. I'm falling behind. And we changed my car to negative 2.25 or 2.5 in the front. Kind of maxed out whatever it was you could do, I think, without making the car illegal by adding something, right? So the problem is, this is a car I drive every day. Well, that means your tires are wearing out, because that's what does the front. And that was not something we were adjusting all the time. So it was interesting. The back had this eccentric thing that you adjusted stuff with, and you can do that every event, but your front camber we did not do. I set it, and I left it that way for life. So, that's why that car was so challenging for us, right? Because if I had it set for autocross, trust me, I started, the Corvette was also not lowered as low as it could go, because I would get stuck. I was getting stuck on speed bumps, because I drove it every day. I got stuck in clients' driveways. I got stuck. I was getting stuck everywhere. It was hilarious. And it wasn't as low as everybody else's. That was just as low as I could go and manage to still drive around. So the Civic, I knew things. And then the things I hear, because for me a lot of it is sound, and it's really interesting to me that I can diagnose things by sound and by feel, even though I don't know what they are. And I was saying, something's wrong. I hear my car, and I'm pointing at the distributor. I'm going, my car is making noise, and it's like, I'm trying to describe this weird sound that's making, and it's there, and they're looking, and they're like, your car's fine, cloth cap, your car's fine. No. Car's not fine. Something is wrong. And ultimately, the coil was fraying. I heard it fraying. How do you hear a copper coil fraying?
So do you also, that's something I've realized people don't necessarily do. I had a friend at a pro solo, and he's like, oh, there's so much going on with the lights and everything. I have to rev. I go, just listen to your revs. And he was like, oh, I'm not doing that. So I think when people are too excited or too nervous, they're not doing that. It sounds like you even listen while you're driving, and you can not only feel what the wheel's doing, but you can probably hear the tires talking to you.
I do hear a lot. It depends on the car. With Henry Bodkin's EXP Camaro, I couldn't hear a lot of the car because the car was it was fairly loud and rumbly, and so it was hard to hear. But I hear car parts. I hear things. It's weird. I just hear stuff that doesn't sound right to me, and I identify where it's coming from. And invariably, if you really take a good look, there's something going wrong there. And I don't know. I do. I hear it. I feel stuff. Revs were interesting because, like, I would attempt to get around a certain RPM and I'd look down, but I'd also listen, you know, and you get to that point where I just kind of knew where it needed to be and feel it. I remember at the beginning trying to be people going, okay, well, with the MX6, yeah, 4,000 RPM. Well, that's great, but it all depends on how you release the clutch. Every single one of us lets it out a little bit differently, right? So it's going to make a difference. So you just, for me, yeah, you're listening, and it's all a connection between how your feet operate, right? What speed they move.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting that you went from the Corvette to the Civic, which I think, once again, you've got to be very different in how you're going to launch those two cars. You can't, in a Civic, I feel like you can pretty much mash the gas pedal once it's hooked up. As you said earlier, the Corvette, you could never use all the power.
Well,
your right foot has to be very, well, you should probably very seldom mash that pedal all the way to the ground.
How much were you around me when I drove the Corvette? Were you really around then?
No, I was around, but I wasn't paying enough attention that I will say I was around enough.
Okay, so I was famous for second gear burnout.
So when you shifted, you kept your foot on the gas.
Yeah, I'm sure that wasn't the best thing for the car, but yes, especially at pro solos. I'd be really, woo, wound up and, second gear burnout. That was kind of my thing. You can ask those that raced with me and hung out with me, and they will tell you about them.
So that makes me think. At times in the Civic, I try to catch second gear because I'm shifting so fast, and I think you need to calm down and be smooth. Did you ever tell yourself to be smooth, and especially lifting off the brakes? Did you ever pay attention to how you came off of the brake pedal?
In the Civic?
Either car, any car you've ever driven.
How I came off the brake pedal? Huh.
So I'm bringing this up because I realized reading a racing book, I was shocking the tires as much by braking hard. I would jump off the pedal. At times, I actually consciously can come off really smoothly, so I can transition. And I'm talking mainly trail braking type applications.
I don't think I focused a lot more on applying braking and learning to really be. And what's really interesting is your brain works this stuff out for you. If you look way ahead and so you've got a sweeper coming up or a turn, but if before you ever get near that thing, you've looked all the way across the course and seen basically the exit or whatever that turn is, your brain implants it, and suddenly you're slowing down and you don't even know it. You have just scrubbed like a hint of speed. So I did have to think about it, but not. The more I learned to look farther and farther ahead, the more my body just sort of took care of it for me and scrubbed off the speed early and very lightly and very interesting. Just coming off the brakes was never as much of a focus, and there was something though that what was interesting, that Tim Arrow defined at that Evo school that I did attend, and he was looking for something, because this was when I was probably at my peak of driving skill. He said, well, you're looking for thousandths of a second at this point in your driving. He said, what I'm finding is you slow down, you get into a turn, and you're hitting the gas too hard, and you have to lift again. And you're either lifting again, which brings the weight off the nose, and now your tires aren't sticking, or you're even tapping, he said, which is actually almost better because at least weight stays on the nose, but then you're scrubbing speed. He said, but at every single turn, you've slowed down enough, you get on the gas too hard, you come back off the gas, and then you get on it. He goes, you've upset the car, you've slowed down, you've pulled weight on and off the front tires. He said, if you could get rid of that second braking, if you would not get on the gas so hard after you slowed down, if you could find that point where you could just maintain, or slowly increase, you will be faster and you will gain those thousandths that you're looking for. But he said, we're not talking that you're gaining 2 or 3 seconds. You're gaining, hundreds, thousands. Like when, and I tried. Oh my God. But focusing on that, anything you focus on, you're just going to end up screwing up like 500 times. So that would be hilarious, going to practices and just being focused on trying to do that. And after a while, I finally went, okay, maybe this will just be my style because I can't seem to fix this problem.
Yeah, I agree that after one of the schools, I had all these things I had to fix. It made me terrible for a few months. Like I regressed trying to implement all that. And finally I said, okay, I can't do this now. What I think happened is later I might have thought about it and implemented one or two at a time, but same type thing. You just can't do that. But that's interesting. What you said reminded me that many times I'd be like, I'm going to be flat out here. And I would forget that with the gas pedal, I should modulate. Literally, most of the time it's modulation adding power. It's not flat out, even in a Civic. I think here in Denver, I gave myself the excuse we're down on power by 20%. Because I get down to sea level, and oh my goodness, my right foot was terrible. You'd feel the car surging back and forth. Doing exactly what you're saying, like, oh, I gave it too much, now I got to lift off a little bit and go back and forth.
Right. And all that's doing is just slowing things down, right? Because it's just not consistent. It's interesting.
I'd say you go over the limit of grip and then you came back and over and back instead of trying staying at that maximum.
Right. But it's very interesting. And, it's something else kind of when we were talking about the schools there. I had Gene Kinzer as an instructor back in, because I actually even went to an Evo school back when it was McKamey, and I had Jim McKamey as an instructor way back when. And then after Gene had it, I had Gene as an instructor, and there was one thing that I've never forgotten that she did. She sat in the passenger seat, and she said, Leslie, I want you to talk the entire time you're driving and tell me what's coming up. Pretend I've never been at an autocross and I'm here and I'm really scared to be a passenger in your car because I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand what's coming up. And you're going to be telling me, everything you're going to be doing. And when she made me do that, first it was really hard to do. When she made me talk out loud and describe everything that I was going to do, I had to look so far ahead. It was like, oh, you are so smart, lady, because having to do that description, I was looking way ahead. And I have, since I've moved to North Carolina, I have taught at schools. I haven't really been driving here, but I have taught. And from the passenger seat, because I like my students to do their own driving. I'm not an instructor who hops in and drives their cars, very rarely, but I will be talking to them if they want. If they don't want me to talk, I don't talk. If they want me to talk, I will talk to them way in advance and be going, you're going to look across to the left of the course and try to see where the exit is. And we're yelling with the helmets.
Yeah.
Look across to the left. Now look ahead. Look to this. And we'll walk the course maybe first so that, we talk about what's going to happen. But I did shortly after I came here, I didn't have my own race car, so I borrowed an S2000, and the guy wanted to ride with me. He very much wanted to ride with me, and I was attempting to talk with him, and that's just it, talk about what you're doing. Sadly, S2000s are not, I and they are not very good friends, and he had a very pristine one, and it wasn't very pristine. After we went through a little field. I mean, everything was perfect. It just had, it was a little dirty.
I will admit that I raced a few weeks ago and I took the GT3 with the owner into the field, but he said it was so calm. He goes, you just went straight into the grass and turned around nicely and came back. I was like, yes, and it didn't bottom out or break anything. I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, well, this, was graphic, but it was funny because, S2000s, and I had not driven in a while, and they're especially sensitive to things like, turning and lifting at the same time. So they went into a slalom too hot on a very narrow little track. It was at testing ground. So it wasn't like in a parking lot. It was a very narrow track, and it was on a turn, and it was a slalom. And I don't know why I turned the wheel and lifted at the same time, but I did. And all I knew it was like, oh, we are now backwards. We're going to gently glide backwards, and we're just going to do this nicely now. And I'm talking to him while we're doing that. I said, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. We're just going to go with this very gently, and I'm not making any, jerky movements, and we did. We went out. We came back on. He wanted me to keep driving. He wanted me to take more runs and keep driving him around because he's going, oh, no, I'm learning a lot. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Look at your poor car that I need to have detail. Because it was interesting because, oh, but I'm learning so much from you. I'm like, what? How to, not have a lift and go backwards? No.
He's probably learning how to put, I bet he learned how to push a lot harder.
He might have, because I seriously should not have probably been pushing that hard on a course I'd never been in, a car I'd never been in, and not having driven in, I probably hadn't driven in a year, and, it was just like, okay, Leslie, you're an idiot. But whatever. Things happen. We all have lapses in judgment, right? But,
I just did it myself. Took the nice, expensive car. I said, I don't know how I ended up over there either. I think I pushed the gas too soon, which I've done several times in rear-wheel drive cars that are underpowered. I get in there, and I see some straight opening or straightish, and I mash the gas pedal like it's a Civic. And the rear end just comes right around.
Yeah.
And I go, how did I hit those timing lights? And it takes like 10 minutes to realize, oh, it's not a Civic. You can't just mash the pedal. It doesn't, in the Civics, I don't think you'll realize in a front-wheel drive car, like you said, when you come out of turns and you just get on the gas, it pulls it straight.
Yeah.
That doesn't work in these other funny cars.
No. And that was, that was something I actually had to work on in the Civic, because in the Corvette, when I got really good at it, yes, I was accelerating hard, but, you're gradually going down on that pedal, right? You're gradually pressing it down and as best you can, right? Because you've got more power than the width of the track is going to give you.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, but you do modulate, you do that in the Civic, but it goes much faster. So at first, I had a little issue because I wouldn't put it completely all the way to the floor, but that didn't last long. And my foot likes to go to the floor. It's very interesting. Like, my husband and I are radically different drivers, and for some reason, my foot has always liked being ground. Like, I describe it as grinding the gas pedal into the floorboards, and that is where my foot likes to be. We are very different that way, because people keep, there will be a distance between the gas pedal and the bottom.
Yeah, instead of, no, I want every last little bit. Tell me this.
And I have been. I know in the Civic, I have actually pushed so hard before that I pushed myself up in the seat. Because the car didn't have enough power.
You're bracing yourself. I didn't say, but I love that you said the talk through runs. I've literally done that. I even tried to record myself, which you can't hear via my iPhone headset. But literally talking is another thing I try to trick myself into doing, saying, okay, where am I looking? Okay, over there, I'm going to turn here, turn there. I literally tried that. And just like you said, when riding with people, I know I say, look over there. I have my hand almost in front of their face. I hope this is legal. SCCA, don't get me. I'm like, look over there, and I point. And I think at times people are like, they're still looking straight ahead, and then my hand's in their way. Like, no, you should be looking over there now. Do you think you also scan? Do you scan while you're doing that?
Are you saying scan? Like you're looking all over?
Do you scan up, come back, up and back, up and back, up and back?
Yes. And when I'm driving, I'm seeing a lot. And it's interesting. My most amazing driving experience ever was at Spring Mountain Motorsports in Pahrump in my V06. And it was unbelievable because I got to the point I could see everything. It was wild. I call it Zen because it was the most peaceful, it was exhilarating yet totally peaceful and totally Zen. And I talked to Ken Monishi about it, and Ken has achieved that we were talking about that feeling and sensation. He's achieved it multiple times autocrossing, and I'm going, I don't get it autocrossing, but I got it at the track. I could see everything. My times were unbelievably fast. I mean, like crazy fast. I could see the whole desert. I could see the track. I could see everything. My mind was seeing and absorbing all of it. It was like I was one with everything, and I was just flying. And here I am, I'm at these track days, right, with cars that are, built in, 12-inch, Goodyear racing slicks and all this other stuff, and I'm in a stock of the other six, that's got slanty adjustments, but, and some bar comps maybe, but that's it. And it was just fascinating because I was just flying. And it was so amazing, though. It was the most interesting driving session I've ever had because we were having 20-minute sessions. And for the majority of the session, I was just one with the car and the landscape and the track. And I could see everything. And everything was almost as if it was in slow motion. And it was just amazing. I tried to recapture that my entire career of driving, and I've never been able to do it again.
So here's my thoughts. What was going on in your life outside of the racing?
Because of that, I don't know. Good question. Probably business had gone like really bad or something.
You were really mad. Were you mad at Mark? Were you mad at yourself?
Who knows? I don't even remember, but it was just it was fascinating. It was really interesting. Couldn't get it back in another session. Couldn't make it happen. It just happened. It was just unbelievable. I'm like, wow. And then I remember talking with Ken, and he would go, well, I've had that happen a couple times autocrossing, he said, and it's just, I can see the whole course and all the P workers and everything, and it's effortless. And they're going, yeah, it was effortless.
So I've got to tell people about this. That's basically being in the zone. And I had a friend who knows I've been reading a lot, and she gave me this book I'm holding called The Art of Learning, Josh Waitzkin. So Josh Waitzkin was made famous because of the movie he's a chess kid, The Next Bobby Fischer. His dad wrote that book, and the movie is made about him. But what's interesting is he burned out at 20-something years old and got into Tai Chi, which led to, I want to call it push hands competitions, where he literally traveled around the world, became the push hands champion, I think of the two different styles. But he has all these points in here, and I'm a lot trying to focus on the mental side of racing, the mental side of anything I'm doing, actually controlling the brain. And he points out in there, if you find things that you do feel like you're in the zone doing, his whole point, which I'll break down hopefully very quickly and succinctly here, is you make sure, let's say it's you doing your work, you doing LeslieCohenDesign.com, like you're designing things. If that's your zone, what he says you do, or if it's his example is like throwing a football with your kid. If that's just like you're in the zone, it's so peaceful and fun and time just flies. He says you start building things in before that. 2 or 3 things before that, and it might be 10 minutes of listening to a song or working out, a combination of things, and then the zone time. And then you start cutting those things down in between, or the time for each one down. And pretty soon, he said, what you're doing is you're tricking your brain into, if you listen to the music and you work out and you do a third thing, all of a sudden it expects to be in the zone for the next. So that's something that I'm going to see if I can adapt, like, when am I in the zone? Can I pre-program my brain that when I do steps 1, 2, and 3, I then feel like I'm in the zone of focus or what have you. And his goal is to get it down to, it takes you 30 seconds to get yourself in the zone.
Wow.
But the key is knowing what gets you, where do you feel like that in life already, and then how can you start putting things in front of it?
To
start training.
Fascinating. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to, sadly, I was going to say, at my drafting table. So what's sad is I love, hand drafting, hand drawing. But, I still do my concept designs on a drafting table. And this does relate to racing, trust me. And now, you're doing your actual plans in a computer, right, in a CAD program. Well, I actually have a bigger screen on my regular computer, but basically I sit with my laptop at my drafting table because I like it. So for me to get in the zone in record time, I'm like going, what I need to do is put a tree, like to have a pro solo tree. That's just it. I need to roll my drafting chair up.
Yeah.
It'll only take me like 20 seconds, right? rolled my rocking chair up and the lights came down, just imagine I'd just be just like creatively, boom, I'd be there.
Yeah. So I would say, go ahead.
Yeah.
You would basically listen to a song, do something else, do 2 or 3 things before you sit down and draft, and then let's say you would take that same pre-routine to a race and do those 3 things and then go race.
Interesting.
Although for you even, I would say maybe if you thought that you could start drafting and drawing on a piece of paper before you ran, that might get your mind in that zone. So I'm not sure why I stand outside my car and stretch and breathe, but I'm probably trying to get in the zone. I feel like I get really like almost sleepy. So I'm outside trying to wake up like, hey, get excited.
Yeah.
You're about to go run. I feel like if anything, I start calming down a whole bunch. Like I go, whoa, I'm going into a coma. It's about time to race. Let's wake up.
Well, it's funny because all different years I had different things. So sometimes I'd like stretch, and sometimes I might jog in place, and sometimes I'd just be talking with people, and different periods of time. It's interesting though because I agree with that book actually in many ways. And since I've moved here, I've had a lot of personal growth because if you just uproot yourself from where you've been your entire life, and you move with your husband across the country, and you don't have jobs, and you don't know a single person where you have gone, it's like dropping us into, alien land, you have to learn a lot of things about yourself. And it's interesting. It's been a tremendous personal growth, experience. Now, I've always had different ways that I got kind of in the zone design-wise, but I have found, just like he says in the book, I will burn certain essential oils and maybe put on certain music, and that can get me in the zone, the creation zone, maybe faster than if I don't. But I remember it used to be when I was younger. It would be, oh my God. I would go in my office, close the door, crank up music really loud, like rock, heavy metal rock, I don't know, whatever, super loud, and create. And when I was having my own kitchen remodel, I designed it, but I had a contractor that I worked with all the time. He was doing the work. I'd disappear into my office, which was in the house, close the door. In half an hour, he'd hear all this loud music. It'd come out half an hour, 45 minutes later. He goes, oh my God, I got to see what you've come up with. He's going, this is unbelievable. He tells clients, you can't even believe what she does. And she comes up with these amazing ideas. It was so funny because back then, that was a way I got in my zone, right? So, yeah, it's kind of funny. Same thing about how do you get in your zone racing? Because everybody does something different. You watch all sorts of there's fascinating rituals and autocross that people have. Everybody's different. You watch people in the car, where they're slapping their hands, they're clapping, and you've got, you just have everything.
Screamers.
You got screamers. You've got, and it changes. We change as people. So I don't think, it's funny, like I guess in that book, if he's talking about getting it down to 30 seconds, okay, that might work at his age and stage and place where he is in life. But like for me, my life changes. So at different times, different things are the right thing for me. Not that it's always radically different. I'm sort of, it's funny because sometimes I get down on myself as a designer, just like I get down on myself as a driver, like, this isn't, like, I don't know. I'm not in the zone, but I've done this for so many years that I could do this in my sleep, so to speak. So it's like, for me, even what is something when I feel like I'm not there, people are still like, oh my God, these are great ideas. And I'm like going, imagine if I'd really been, like, my brain has been working, right? Kind of because I've done it for so long. So driving, I could probably go out today. Would I be at national competitive level? No. There's no way right now. I haven't been driving for several years now, other than maybe teach a school once a year. But could I drive well and fast, and do things right? Yes. And that's what I found. It was interesting. Probably shouldn't say this, but it was not an SCCA event, so it really doesn't matter. It was not a specifically sanction event, I so much wanted to drive. I taught at the school. I didn't drive the whole day. I had driven my Audi Q5 to the event, and I so much wanted to drive. They let me drive my Audi Q5. They had an instructor trying to go out and drive. Now I know why you should not be autocrossing those kind of vehicles. Nothing happened to it by any means. But it was fascinating because I was like, I can get this thing around the course. When I talked to people later, they were like, oh my God, how much your car lifts and leans and all these other things. And I said, oh, really? But I was still apexing properly and braking early and doing things, Was I record-breaking fast? Doubtful.
That's where I think I had Mr. C-Mod local get in my Integra and D-Stock, and it was funny. He was not used to that leaning and everything being slow. So literally, if you ever get in two very different cars, it takes longer in certain vehicles for things to transition. Leslie, I always have a few questions at least to wrap up the thoughts.
Yes.
What was one of your favorite cars? Out of all these different cars you've driven, a couple
my
of them, one of them stand out?
Car ever, Henry Bodkin's ESP Camaro. You know why? He had that thing set up. It was like a Corvette Z06. That was a nice flip, wasn't it? A Corvette Z06 on steroids. It was awesome. That car was unbelievable. By far my favorite car I've ever driven.
And how much did you drive it?
I drove it one season. So I drove it in pro solos.
Okay.
And
so you had a lot of seat time, and it wasn't one run.
It wasn't one run. It was not one run. I did get to drive a well set up GT2 once for a run. Yeah, actually, that was a nice car. But it was actually kind of like it was driving. It was so well set up. It was like it was driving on rails. It was almost too tame. But I did like that car. But no, Henry's car was just unbelievable. I loved that thing. That was my favorite car.
And if you could drive anybody's car, or one that I magically built for you right now, what would you want to get into?
One that was magically built for you.
Or somebody's car that's already out there. Is there a car you know of? You're like, I always want to drive that car. I would like to drive a GT3 in super stock or.
No. What would I want? I hate to say this. I'm a V8 rear-wheel drive power girl ultimately. Now, sadly, autocross has kind of gone in a direction where that's not really, those aren't necessarily the ultimate vehicles to have. But I don't know. See, I would love to get back into just another like Corvette V8 type vehicle again, and but probably one that's been all like modified. So it would be like a God, they renamed the classes.
A street mod Z06 that Brian Peters is building. In case he's listening, he could offer you a seat. Maybe.
Awesome.
He knows how to set up a car, I would say.
He does. That would be awesome. That would be really neat. Although the flip side to that is just getting, having another little car, driving something little and fun could be fun. But I don't know. I like the power. I like rear wheel drive. I guess with my insecurities that I have, I feel like, I probably wouldn't be very good at it anymore. I'm very competitive, so I don't like to not be good at it.
Yeah, exactly. That's something I think most fast people, they are competitive at some level, even if I think it really comes down to I'm competitive with myself. I want to do as good as I can do. I want to be as good as I can be. And
that is true. I have to tell you, not like some of my best experiences weren't always when I won. They were, when I did a run that I just felt amazing, and you get out and the adrenaline's going and you're shaking and you are just like, oh my God, that was awesome. You didn't necessarily win, but you just felt like you got it, and that's what it was really about, I mean, I like to win, obviously, but, driving was always about the driving, and I guess for me, that's where some people love the car setup, and it's more about the car setup, and they enjoy driving the car, but they love the whole action of building it. Like, take Jason Rhodes. He will build a car for years, right? He wants to engineer and create and build, and that's actually more important to him, I think, than actual driving of the car. And I'm like, I don't want to build a car. I just want to drive the car.
You and I are on the same team. I no longer want to wrench much of anything.
Well, so you bought a car.
Yeah, I'd rather play farmer, permaculture guy than go turn a wrench or really dig a hole in the ground than do that. Leslie, this has been a lot of... Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and there you go. I garden, too. I love to garden, and I belong to garden clubs, and I'm learning all sorts of interesting things constantly from all these fascinating speakers and, places we go and everything else. So it's funny when you talk about permaculture, because that's one of the first talks I went to when I got here. So
that's good stuff.
Yeah. So, I would, if I had to wrench on something, so to speak, it's going to be my garden, right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's how I feel. I literally ship my car off to have somebody else wrench on it because I'm like, I'm never going to put the shocks on there. I admit this a year later. A year later, yep, I buy Jeff Long's car. It sits there for a year. I let other people drive it, and I never put the shocks on my car. You got to know where you're at in life, and you got to know where you're at on the race course so you can get back on the right line and accelerate out. So, Leslie, it's been a ton of fun. I would love to interview you on the business podcast because I'd love to hear more about LeslieCohenDesign.com. And people can also reach out to you there. They can reach out to you on Facebook as well. And the last name is Cohen. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it's going to be helpful. It was very entertaining, I think.
Well, good. I hope people, learn something from this because we all have different approaches. And there's no one right approach, right? You have to figure out who you are. And so hopefully there's something that works, that people are going to hear and something's going to resonate with them, like when John Hayes said to me, Leslie, cars going driving arcs.
Yep.
So hopefully there's something in here, that will resonate with people. So
yes, and be careful who you listen. As you said, be careful who you listen to. Kinch might confuse you, but Leslie will probably lead you on the right path, the right arc, right through those cones looking ahead.
No, I think we each have to find those people that make sense to us. The other thing is, you have to, as far as looking for mentors, let's say, those people who you want to emulate, but also those people who maybe you can emulate, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
Because some of us just aren't going to understand certain people or our style and their style are going to be very different, and they don't make any sense, or they do make sense. You learn from them even though they make no sense to you. Sort of like,
so once you try something and evaluate if it works or not, and then try something else from somebody else maybe. That's life. Honestly, talk about Zen. We could go on, and you got to try things, and if it doesn't work at all, then throw it out and try something from somebody else.
Yep, that is it.
Or try a different car. Who knows?
Try a different car.
It's been fun. It was good to catch up.
It was good to catch up. I'm glad that we did this.
Thanks for listening. For the show notes and contact information, please visit autocrosstalk.com. There you can also subscribe so that we can keep you up to date on new shows as they come out. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes for the upcoming shows. You can connect to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autocrosstalk. You can share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, your suggestions there. Also, share with your friends. Hopefully you found it entertaining and motivating, and hopefully other people will as well. It's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and check back next week for the next show.